All right, so throughout your finance courses, you spend a lot of time with this one character, the rational investor. You know the one, this perfect calculating machine. But what happens when that clean, perfect theory crashes into the messy reality of how real people, normal people like us, actually make financial decisions? That's what we're digging into today. Welcome to the fascinating world of behavioral finance. Okay, so here's our game plan. We're going to start by taking apart that whole rational investor myth. Then we'll get into some really cool ideas like prospect theory, think about how our brains are kind of wired in two different speeds, and look at how our own personal history shapes everything. We'll wrap up with what we actually want from our money and why all of this is so important. All right, first up, let's talk about this rational investor myth. It's really the foundation of so much of standard finance, so we've got to start here. So on one hand, you've got this character from the textbooks. Think of them like a financial supercomputer. Unlimited brain power, zero emotion, with a single mission to maximize wealth. But then there's us, normal people. We don't have unlimited brain power, so we use mental shortcuts. We're definitely not immune to emotion. In fact, our personal experiences totally shape our decisions. And we care about a lot more than just wealth. We care about how our choices make us feel and what they say about who we are. Okay, so how do we know that the rational model isn't the whole story? Well, let's look at prospect theory, which really gets at how we feel about gains and pains. And we're going to do it with a classic experiment that reveals this deep, fundamental, and kind of weird quirk in how we all think about risk. All right, imagine this. I'm offering you a choice. You can take option A, a guaranteed walk-away right-now win of $3,000. Or you can choose option B, an 80% chance to win $4,000, but there's a 20% chance you walk away with nothing. Now, logically, the expected value of B is a little higher. But forget the math for a second. What does your gut say? What feels better? Okay, got your answer? Now let's flip it on its head. The numbers are identical, but this time it's about losses. You can choose option A, a guaranteed unavoidable loss of $3,000. Or you can gamble with option B, an 80% chance you'll lose $4,000, but that 20% chance you lose nothing at all. So does your gut reaction change now that we're talking about losing money? And here is where it gets wild. Look at these results. When it comes to gains, a whopping 80% of people take the sure thing. We're risk-averse. We'd rather have the bird in the hand. But look what happens with losses. It completely flips. 92% of people suddenly become gamblers. They choose the risky option. We become risk-seeking because the thought of locking in a loss is just that painful. This behavior is exactly what prospect theory is all about. It tells us that we don't think about our total wealth in the end. That's what the rational model says. But it's not how our brains work. We think in terms of gains and losses relative to where we are right now. Our starting point, our reference point, is everything. It's not about how much money you have. It's about whether you're up or down from where you started. And digging a little deeper, here's the key psychological driver: loss aversion. To put it simply, losses hurt way more than gains feel good. The sting of losing $50 is about twice as powerful as the joy of finding $50. That's a huge deal. It explains why we'd rather gamble on a bigger potential loss than accept a smaller certain one. We're just wired to avoid pain. Okay, so our feelings about risk are a bit quirky, but it goes deeper. The way we actually think, our mental machinery, is split in two. Let's talk about thinking fast and slow. Let's do a little test. Ready? If it takes 5 machines 5 minutes to make 5 widgets, how long would it take 100 machines to make 100 widgets? Go with your first immediate answer. What number just popped into your head? The answer is 5 minutes. Think about it. If 5 machines make 5 widgets in 5 minutes, that means 1 machine makes 1 widget in 5 minutes. So if you have 100 machines working all at once, they'll make 100 widgets in 5 minutes. Now, if your brain screamed 100 minutes, don't feel bad. That's what most people's brains do. And that little brain teaser perfectly shows us the two systems of the mind. An idea from Nobel laureate Daniel Kahneman. System 1 is your fast, automatic, gut reaction brain. It's the one that saw a pattern and shouted 100. It's effortless. But System 2, that's your slow, deliberate, analytical mind. It's the one you have to consciously engage to pause, think through the logic, and get to 5 minutes. It takes effort. So here's the rub for us in finance. System 1 is amazing for most of life. driving a car, making snap judgments. But finance? Financial decisions are a whole different beast. They have huge consequences, they're super complex, and a lot of the time, the right answer goes against our intuition. This stuff absolutely requires us to hit the brakes and engage that slow, effortful system too. So we've got these two systems of thinking, but what fuels those thoughts? It's not just pure logic. It's our own lives, our own experiences. Let's look at how our personal history shapes us. I love this quote from Morgan Housel's book, The Psychology of Money. He says, everyone has their own unique experience with how the world works. It's because we've had different lives shaped by different and equally persuasive experiences. This is so true. The lessons that really stick with us about money aren't from a lecture. They're from what we've lived. And this isn't just a fuzzy feeling. It's backed by some serious research. Studies have shown that your personal history basically sets your default level of risk tolerance. What you experienced with the economy when you were young anchors how you invest for the rest of your life. Just look at the data. People who grew up during the Great Depression, for example, invested way less in stocks throughout their entire lives. Makes sense, right? People who lived through periods of high inflation tend to be less interested in bonds later on. It even gets down to the micro level. We judge national inflation based on whether the price of milk or eggs went up at our local store last week. It's not rational, it's personal. Okay, so if we're not just robots trying to maximize wealth, what do we actually want? What are we trying to get out of our financial choices? This brings us to the 3 financial wants. Turns out we're looking for 3 kinds of benefits. The first one is obvious, the utilitarian, the practical stuff. What's the return on this? How does this help my portfolio? But there are 2 others. There's the expressive benefit. What does buying this fund say about me, about my values? And then there's the emotional benefit. How does owning this make me feel? Think about investing in a green energy company. Sure, you want it to perform well. That's utilitarian. But it also expresses your belief in sustainability, and it probably makes you feel hopeful or proud. That's huge. All right, let's tie all of this together. Why does any of this matter? Because understanding the difference between the rational theory and the normal reality is everything if you're going to work in this industry. This table really sums it all up. The rational view says we care about total wealth. The behavioral view shows we care about gains and losses. The rational view says we're always risk-averse. Reality shows our risk attitude completely changes depending on the situation. Standard finance assumes we learn from all available data. Behavioral finance shows we're anchored to our own limited experiences. And finally, it's not just about more money. It's about the practical, the expressive, and the emotional benefits. One is a clean model. The other is messy human reality. So I'll leave you with this final thought. Trying to time the market, buying the hot stocks, selling in a panic, that's pure System 1 gut reaction. All the slow System 2 analysis tells us that time in the market is what works. But knowing what we know now about loss aversion and our personal experiences, you can see why discipline is so hard. The real takeaway here isn't just about analyzing spreadsheets. It's about understanding people. You have to understand the powerful, often invisible biases that drive your clients, the market, and most importantly, yourself. That's how you bridge the gap from classroom theory to real-world success.